We're going to talk a little bit today about wiring harnesses on these old Jeeps and stuff, and whether I should change the 12 volts from 6 volts, and I'm going to give you a lot of pros and cons on everything. One of the things that we do here at Walck's 4-wheel drive is we make our own wiring harnesses for all these old Willys Jeeps. The MBs, the GPWs, the 2As, the 3As, the 3Bs, CJ5s, 6s, CJ5s with a V6, all the Willys wagons, trucks, and Jeepsters, and the forward controls FC150 and 170. And the earlier harnesses from about 1956 and back were cloth covered wire, this is a CJ2A harness here, and just to give you an example, all the wires are cloth covered like they were from new, and all the ends are soldered on with the little rubber boots, like the headlight plugs are on and stuff, and a lot of the clips are on to fasten the harness to the body and stuff, to try and make it as easy as we can for you. And on some of the harnesses there was loom around the harness to help protect the wires, and on some of the other harnesses there looked like electrical tape, but it was a different kind of electrical tape that was put on them to hold the wires together. A lot of the ends are eyelet ends, and then we reproduced a lot of these like these 3-in-3 connectors and stuff like that. On a lot of the old Jeeps, like from 1951 and back, those Jeeps didn't have turn signals on from the factory, and then so on these older models we make harnesses with turn signal wires already in, because most people want to drive them on the road and be a little bit safe, because it's a little tough driving on the road these days without turn signals when you're sitting at the intersection and the guy across from you don't know which way you're going to go. And so we incorporate turn signal wires right in with the harness, so that you can hook them up and be a little more safe on the road. And we also make them without, for the guys who are being really fussy in the restoration, who maybe aren't going to drive them around too often. These earlier harnesses where the Jeep was 6 volts, if you want to change it to 12 volts you can, because 6 volt wiring is heavier than 12 volt wiring. So it'll easily take the amperage, because 6 volt had a lot more draw on amperage than 12 volt did. So that's not a problem with changing a 6 volt to 12 volt at all. The later models, the harnesses, they were plastic wire, and this one's like off of a CJ5 4-cylinder, and it's the same thing, all the ends are on and stuff. And like on the CJ5s, when they had that big speedometer in there, we put all the light sockets on the harness so that everything plugs right in. All you gotta do is put the bulbs in and stuff. And it's the same thing. These harnesses were taped where they were taped from new, and also in loom cloth where they were in cloth from the factory. And mostly everything that was plastic had turn signals already in it, so that's not an issue with the later stuff. One of the things about everybody always calls up and asks is, I want to change my Jeep to 12 volts. I have an old CJ2, I want to change it to 12 volts, and they're complaining it don't start. There's a couple of issues you really want to go over. They do work on 12 volts. All the cars up until the mid-50s were 6 volts, and they worked. I'm not going to say that they start better than a 12 volt, which they really don't, but they still are very dependable on 6 volts if you have certain things done to them. One of the biggest issues with these things is this Jeep's already 50, 60 years old. The starters a lot of times are shot. You take an old starter, and this one's really a dilapidated one, but if you can take the end of the starter and move the starter drive, it's going to be hard to see on there. But if this moves around over a 1/16 of an inch, that means the bushings inside are shot. And also there was a bushing on the early 2As and 3As and wagons, trucks, and Jeepsters. There was also a bushing in the bell housing that went on the end of the starter to hold the end of the starter. Now this one here, this bushing was on this starter. This is shot. So when this starter cranks over and you got that force on here from the ring gear, it drags the fields, the armature up into the fields and drags the starter, and then it makes it turn real slow and draws a lot more amperage, and it just makes it that they don't want to start. So this is like one of the biggest culprits here, is get your starter fixed correctly and put a new bushing in the flywheel if you have an open end starter like this one. Now if you have a starter that has a nose cone on, well then that bushing will be replaced automatically when the starter guy rebuilds it. We make our own battery cables up here because we couldn't find anybody who was making heavy enough battery cables for us, so we make our own up, and we solder on the ends and stuff, and try and make them close and as original looking as we can, so that they look good on the Jeep when you're restoring it. Now this one here is just to give you an idea how much copper is in these battery cables. You know, that's what I just show you in the end there. And then all the lugs and stuff are on here and stuff, and all you gotta do is put them on. And another culprit of these things not working right is there was a ground strap in a lot of these earlier ones from the it usually ran from most of the time on the 2A and stuff on the motor mount bracket on the passenger side over to just below the generator mount bolt, so that the engine had a ground right from the engine to the frame. And a lot of times these are gone or tore or missing, and that also makes a big problem with these things not starting.